Hey, Woo Crew. Welcome to this Minisode for your holiday week. Today, I am here. It's Eileen. I am here all by myself, and Ellie will be coming to you on Friday. This will be a quick little episode following up from Monday's episode about intuition. Today, I want to speak to why it is so hard to trust our intuition and even why it's hard to hear it, as it were. I assume that the majority of you listening here identify as female or are in female bodies. And intuition as women is fraught with its own difficulties as compared to men. I think that generally humans in this society today struggle with listening to and trusting their intuition, but for slightly different reasons. And so today I'm going to speak generally, but also more specifically to why it's hard as a woman in this society to hear your intuition and to trust it, to listen to it. The really short, simple, easy answer is that we've been socially conditioned not to trust it, not to listen to it. Our culture really prizes rationality, intellect over emotion or felt sense. It's also a society that really prioritizes action over reflection, those kind of really hyper masculinized traits, being rational, intellectual, in action, not that slower, calmer, perhaps more feminine experience of reflection and intuition and emotional intelligence. And as women specifically, so those things I've mentioned impact men as well. The need to be go, go, go and be really decisive and to have a reason behind every action. And then women, on top of that piece, have been conditioned from the time that they are young, that we're little girls, to ignore our intuition and our own needs. It starts with a suppression of our true selves, of ignoring our physical needs, of ignoring our emotional needs, our spiritual needs, because learning to ignore the body and the wisdom in our bodies allows us to take care of everybody else, to ensure that everyone else in the room is comfortable, even if we're not, to put everyone's needs ahead of our own, to stay quiet when we feel like we should speak up, to follow the lead of the men in our lives, even when our bodies are screaming out that we'd rather go the other direction. And this is what makes us good women, submissive, prioritizing everybody else, leaving ourselves to last, and a lifetime of ignoring your body wisdom and needs leads to a really difficult time connecting with intuition because, as we mentioned on the last episode, intuition comes from our bodies. It lives in our guts, in our hearts, in our spirit. And to hear it, we need to be able to listen to our bodies, to our hearts, and to our spirit. And when we have denied those feelings for our whole lives, it can be so hard to tap in. And then on top of that, it can be really hard to the first step is listening. And so you might be along that path of kind of having some of those knowings and nudges. And in some areas, it could be easy to trust. I think with children, often women find that their intuition comes on board a little bit more, that mama bear instinct of trusting that intuition in order to protect your children. It almost overrides some of our conditioning. But when it comes to ourselves and what's right for us, what's best for us, or even in broader contexts, what might not on the surface appear to have any rational reason for feeling that way, but there's just an inner knowing, it can be really, really hard to trust it because often people around us will ask us to back up our decisions or our knowings or our wants or our desires with a reason why. And sometimes there isn't an obvious reason. This really brings to mind for me my experiences as a midwife. Obviously, there's a lot at stake. There's a lot on the line for a woman giving birth. And more often than not, things go beautifully. Things are uncomplicated, especially for midwifery clients. We are experts in low risk, normal pregnancies and births with skills to handle when things become not normal. But there were so many times when I had a hit of intuition that told me something was wrong or that we needed to be in a different location long before anything evidence-based, as it were, came to light. There was a couple of home births where, as I drove to the birth, I had a deep discomfort with being at home. In one case, I had never even met the client. It was another midwife's client. She had been up all night and was with another woman and needed me to go to assess this woman in labor. She'd had an uncomplicated pregnancy. She was healthy. It was her first baby. There's nothing to flag that this shouldn't be a beautiful, straightforward home birth. I walked into her home and it was beautifully lit, and she had affirmations on the walls and soft music playing and a doula. Everything was perfect. And I was so uncomfortable. My whole body was screaming that we shouldn't be there. And I was right. And thankfully, thank goodness, I can't remember what caused me to finally be able to say, hey, I'm noticing this or this happened. I think I have to recommend that we go into the hospital. Something caused me to finally, after several hours of being home, be able to say, I think we need to go in. And there was this deepening of trust in my intuition through these experiences. That baby is okay today, but was not okay at birth. Thank goodness we were in hospital. Thank goodness OB was on hand, and all is well today. However, had we stayed home, all would not have been well. And so for me, it was this sense of, even before I got there, knowing we shouldn't be there, but having no way to say that to the client. I couldn't just walk in and be like, we need to go to the hospital. She'd have been like, why? Everything's fine. And all I would have been able to say to her is, I don't know. I just know. And so I offer this as an example of how difficult it can be to take this knowing that we have and trust it and act on it in the face of our society and our culture. And so when you are starting to practice trusting your intuition, you're not going to hopefully practice in high stakes environments like healthcare and taking care of women in labor, but starting to practice, as Ellie and I mentioned in Monday's episode, with small stakes things. And I think it's helpful to start verbalizing it. I like to test my intuition sometimes in, again, really low stakes ways. And if you're comfortable speaking about it with your friends, with your family, the more that we speak to these witchy woo practices or things that have so much truth and history in them, the more normalized they become. And perhaps we begin to shift the tides back towards a culture that does trust in the wisdom that lives in our bodies, that does trust women's wisdom too, because this space of intuition is a space of divine feminine in a big way. And again, men have access to the divine feminine. We all have both inside of us. But there is this connected sense that women carry, I believe, in our female bodies. Having that connection to our felt inner state and felt sense is one of our superpowers, if we can harness it and tap into it, which is not easy. So, sending you love on this Wednesday in December, sending you courage as you begin to practice and lean into your intuition, and let it be playful and light to begin with. And as I always say, let yourself be right. That's a wrap on today. Ellie will be dropping in on Friday with another little minisode about closing the portal, about what to do to wrap up a tapping into your intuition. Obviously, there's no end to intuition. It hits when it hits, and we get better and better at noticing it and trusting it as we practice with it. But I'm really looking forward to what she has to say on Friday, and I hope you are too. We'll be back to your regularly scheduled programming, as it were, with full episodes next week. But wishing you the warmest holiday season, and we'll talk to you very soon.